The Exaraxi fleet drifted like ancient monuments in the darkness of space, its once glorious engines, now reduced to silent husks floating aimlessly. The once proud warships, which had controlled vast stretches of the galaxy, now seemed like ghosts, their hulls battered, and their weapons systems cold. The hum of the engines that once made these ships the most formidable in the universe was replaced by the eerie quiet of impending death. Commander Lorvok stood at the helm of the flagship, his piercing yellow eyes fixed on the distant horizon of stars beyond the viewports. He had seen worlds fall to the might of the Exaraxi Empire, seen countless enemies crushed beneath the weight of their technological supremacy. But now he faced an enemy unlike any before, an enemy of malfunction and failure. A mere glitch had crippled their engines, a single catastrophic breakdown. And now the fleet was stranded far from home, floating through the void, with no way to escape. Lorvok clenched his fists as he paced across the command deck. His mind raced through all possible solutions, but each one led to the same conclusion. Nothing they could do would fix the fleet's engines. Nothing could bring them home. Their best engineers had tried everything, but the damage was beyond even their advanced capabilities. A sense of desperation clung to the air like a thick fog. Every attempt to send out a distress signal had failed. Their systems had been corrupted by the interference caused by their crippled engines. The few remaining ships that had not suffered complete system failures were barely functional. Their weapons were inoperable, their shields flickered weakly, and their communication systems were down. The fleet was no longer a symbol of fear and dominance, but a helpless congregation of derelict warships adrift in the unfeeling vacuum of space. Lorvok knew that without help the Exaraxi people would perish. They would be forgotten in the vast expanse of the universe, their legacy reduced to nothing more than scattered debris lost to time. He thought back to the stories of old, when their empire was at its peak, when the Exaraxi ruled with unquestioned strength, when no enemy dared to challenge their might, when they were the masters of the galaxy. But now those days seemed like a distant memory, a cruel reminder of how far they had fallen. Lorvok felt the weight of his ancestors pressing down on him, their eyes watching from the stars, expecting him to find a way to restore the fleet to its former glory. Yet he knew that they could not survive alone. And so he made a decision, the only decision left. He would send out a final desperate plea for help, despite the odds, despite the humiliation it might bring. It was the only chance they had left. If there was even the smallest possibility that another species could offer their assistance, Lorvok would take it. His pride was irrelevant now. What mattered was survival. He turned to his communications officer, a young Exaraxi named Ziloth, and gave the order to send a distress signal. The message would go out to the farthest reaches of space, and if anyone was listening, they would know the Exaraxi were in need, and perhaps someone would hear it, someone would answer. As the signal was transmitted across the stars, the silence of space seemed to grow deeper, as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for an answer from the unknown. On Earth, the message arrived like a faint whisper on a distant wind, lost among the countless communications streaming through humanity's space stations and monitoring arrays. At first, no one thought it would be anything more than a garbled message from an unknown source. Some dismissed it as interference or a freak anomaly from the farthest reaches of the galaxy, but there was something about it that caught the attention of Captain Emily Carter in the command center of the United Earth Forces. Captain Carter was a woman of action and resolve, known for her quick decisions in moments of crisis. Her mind, sharp and focused on the mission ahead, she was at her desk sifting through data reports. When the signal came through, she had seen many strange things in the depths of space, but this message was different. There was a sense of urgency in the coded transmission, an odd structure to the language, something that suggested it was not random noise, but a deliberate plea for help. Her instincts kicked in immediately. Her eyes narrowed as she examined the signal further, pulling up visual scans of the transmission's origin. The coordinates were far from any known human colony or fleet, but they weren't entirely unfamiliar. They came from a region of space near the edge of the galaxy, where few missions had ventured and no human ships had ever returned. Carter knew the risks, but she also knew the stakes. Humanity had spent decades expanding its reach beyond the confines of Earth, creating colonies across several star systems and establishing a foothold in the interstellar community. Their ships had traveled far and wide, but they had never encountered a species like the one that had sent this message. She quickly alerted her command staff, assembling the brightest minds from engineering, science, and military strategy to analyze the situation. Within minutes, her chief engineer, Lieutenant Derek Foster, entered the room, a tall and quick-witted officer with a reputation for unconventional problem-solving. He was already running simulations on the message, trying to decode its meaning. This isn't a prank, Carter thought to herself. She had seen too many false alarms and false hope in her career to mistake this for anything other than a real emergency. But what was the nature of the sender? Who were these aliens? And what did they want from Earth? The message was brief, but it was clear enough. It described an alien fleet stranded in space with no hope of survival unless assistance arrived. Their engines were disabled, their systems malfunctioning, and their crew were beginning to panic. The transmission was filled with static, but the words that came through were unmistakable. The plea for help was desperate. Their survival hung by a thread. Foster continued running diagnostics, and then he spoke up. Captain, this could be a trap. There's no way to confirm their identity. But if what they say is true, this could be an opportunity for us to gain valuable intelligence on alien technologies. Carter took a deep breath, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the edge of her desk. We can't ignore it, she said decisively. It's a risk we have to take. We don't know if anyone else will come to their aid. But if we don't try, we might miss an opportunity to establish ourselves among the stars. We're sending a fleet. Within hours, Earth's leaders convened and approved the mission. A human fleet was hastily assembled for a journey into the unknown. The crew was handpicked to include experts in engineering, medicine, diplomacy, and combat, should the worst arise. As the countdown to launch began, Carter stood before her crew in the hangar bay, looking at the faces of those who would accompany her on this unprecedented mission. As the ships prepared to leave Earth's atmosphere, Carter's thoughts were divided between hope and caution. What awaited them in the cold expanse of space was unknown, but the fate of an entire alien fleet might rest on their shoulders, and she was determined to answer the call. The human fleet tore through the fabric of space, its ships gliding smoothly through hyperspace toward the coordinates given by the HFY distress signal. Captain Emily Carter stood at the command console of the lead vessel Sovereign, her fingers tapping lightly on the controls, her mind racing with possibilities. The crew aboard the fleet was a mix of seasoned veterans and eager new faces, all united by the same mission: to answer an alien call for help that no one else seemed to have heard or cared about. The message had been faint, distorted, and yet it carried an undeniable urgency, a call for salvation from the unknown. As the ships of the human fleet exited hyperspace, a vast and unnerving sight greeted them. The HFY fleet, seemingly frozen in time, was spread out across the void. Giant ships, their sleek designs once symbols of fear and power, now floated aimlessly, battered and broken. Their once grand warships, capable of leveling entire planets, had become little more than derelict hulks. Some were tethered together by their last remaining cables, others drifted alone, their engines dead. There were no signs of combat, no wreckage from an attack, just an eerie silence that seemed to hang over the fleet like a dark cloud. Carter's heart raced. She had been briefed on the HFY's reputation, their technological marvels, their dominance across countless star systems, and their ability to defeat any opponent with ease. But now, as she observed the wreckage, a stark realization set in. These mighty ships were in ruins, and the HFY who piloted them were helpless in their hour of need. A strange mix of awe and trepidation flooded Carter's thoughts. Humanity was here to help, but what if they were too late? What if the alien fleet had already been abandoned, and they were just looking at a graveyard? "Captain," came the voice of Lieutenant Derek Foster from the communication station. "We're getting a weak transmission from one of the ships. They're trying to contact us." Carter nodded, her pulse quickening. "Patch it through," she ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. A crackling, garbled voice filled the bridge. The static cleared momentarily, revealing a deep, commanding tone. "This is Commander Lorvok of the HFY fleet. If you are receiving this, we require immediate assistance. Our fleet is stranded, and without intervention, we will be lost. Do not approach our ships unprepared. We will not tolerate intrusion. Help, or leave us to die." The words hung heavy in the air. There was no gratitude, no pleading, just a cold demand. The Exaraxi were proud, and in their eyes, humanity was little more than an afterthought. Carter could hear the disdain in Lorvok's voice. But there was also something else: desperation. Beneath the arrogance, there was fear, and fear was something that even the mightiest empire could not mask. "Understood," Carter said firmly, projecting the authority she had cultivated over years of military service. "We're here to help, Commander Lorvok. We'll provide aid, but we will be boarding your ships to make repairs." There was a long pause, and then the alien commander's voice crackled again, lower this time. "You will dock with the Triumph first. We will allow it. But know this: you are entering the heart of a fleet on the verge of collapse. We have no time for your weakness." Carter's fingers clenched into a fist, but she masked her frustration. She wasn't there to fight. She was there to help, to prove humanity's worth to these beings who seemed so far beyond them. And yet, here they were, asking for help. The Sovereign and the rest of the human fleet moved into position, maneuvering with precision to dock with the Exaraxi flagship. The silent tension between the two fleets was palpable, the void of space amplifying the cold distance between them. Carter gave a final glance to her crew, who were all silently preparing for what would be their first encounter with the mysterious and proud alien race. What would happen when the doors opened and the humans boarded their ships? Would they be welcomed as saviors or treated as intruders? The unknown loomed large, and the only thing she could be certain of was that the coming moments would define everything for both species. The Sovereign gently docked with the flagship Triumph of the Exaraxi fleet, its sleek hull aligning with precision to the alien ship's docking port. The hum of human-engineered systems vibrated through the hull, a sharp contrast to the silent broken energy that emanated from the massive Exaraxi vessel. The air inside the command deck of the Sovereign felt thick with anticipation. Captain Emily Carter stood tall, her hands steady as she gave her final orders to her crew. "Prepare for boarding," Carter said, her voice calm but firm. "Keep your composure, follow my lead. These people, these aliens, are proud. We need to approach them with respect, no matter how they treat us." Lieutenant Derek Foster, the chief engineer, nodded gravely as he checked the tools for the repair teams. "I'll ensure our best engineers are ready, Captain. If we get the go-ahead, we'll start work immediately." Carter's gaze moved across the bridge. Her officers stood ready, alert but wary. She knew the risks. This could go horribly wrong, and humanity could find itself caught between the desperate Exaraxi and their own fragile resolve. But it was a chance they had to take. As the airlock doors of the Sovereign opened, the crew prepared for the first steps onto the alien vessel. The atmosphere was heavy, charged with the weight of the unknown. Beyond the airlock, the Exaraxi flagship's interior loomed, a mix of intimidating technology and ancient grandeur. Dark corridors stretched out before them, illuminated by low amber lights that flickered ominously. The design was alien but somehow familiar, as if the ship had been built to evoke both awe and fear. A delegation of Exaraxi stood at the other end of the docking bay. Their forms were tall, lithe, and imposing, their skin a dark metallic sheen that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Their eyes glowed with an eerie yellow hue, and their armor, engraved with intricate designs, gave off an aura of ancient power. Commander Lorvok, flanked by two of his officers, stood motionless at the forefront, his piercing gaze locking onto Carter's. Carter stepped forward, her posture commanding, her expression resolute. Behind her, her crew followed in line, but none spoke. The Exaraxi remained silent as well, watching the humans with suspicion in their glowing eyes. Lorvok's voice was the first to break the silence, deep and imposing. You are the humans who dare to step aboard the Triumph *. His tone was thick with disdain. You are no warriors. You are nothing but children playing with toys far beyond your understanding. What can your weak race offer us? Our empire once ruled the stars. Your kind are insignificant. The words stung, but Carter didn't flinch. She had been trained for moments like this. The Exaraxi, she knew, were a species of immense pride, but pride could only carry a species so far when faced with imminent destruction. She took a slow breath and stepped forward with a calm but steady presence. We are not here to prove ourselves to you, Commander Lorvok, she said firmly. We are here to offer help. If you will allow it, we can get your fleet moving again. We can help you return home. But that will only happen if you put aside your pride and trust us. Lorvok's eyes narrowed, studying Carter as if weighing her words. For a long moment, he said nothing. The silence stretched between them like a tightrope ready to snap. You speak as if your kind possesses the knowledge to repair our engines, Lorvok said finally, his voice tinged with a mixture of disbelief and reluctant curiosity. And what makes you think I would trust a race so inferior to ours with our most precious technology? We have the experience, Carter replied. We've seen the challenges of space, and we've solved them, time and time again. We're resourceful, we're adaptive, and we're here because we believe that no one deserves to be left to die in the void. The Exaraxi commander studied her closely, and for a moment, Carter feared the worst, that her words had fallen on deaf ears. But then Lorvok took a step back, his posture stiff but resigned. Very well, he said, his voice softer, but still laced with arrogance. You will repair our ships. But know this, should you fail, should you betray our trust, we will have no mercy. The consequences for your kind will be severe. Carter nodded, her jaw clenched with determination. Understood, Commander. We'll begin immediately. With a final dismissive glance, Lorvok turned on his heel and motioned for his officers to lead the humans to the heart of the damaged vessel. As Carter followed, she could feel the weight of the Exaraxi's judgment pressing down on her. She had no illusions about the difficulty of the task ahead, but she also knew that the fate of two species hung in the balance. And no matter the challenge, humanity would not fail. The corridors of the Triumph were silent, save for the sound of the humans' footsteps echoing off the metallic floors. The air felt thick with tension as they followed the Exaraxi officers through the labyrinthine halls of the damaged flagship. The ship's interior was a stark contrast to the desolate emptiness outside. Despite the damage, it still radiated an eerie beauty. Walls lined with intricate carvings, luminous symbols that seemed to pulse faintly, and elegant designs that spoke of a once great empire. But now these halls felt more like tombs, hollowed out by the ravages of time and failure. Carter kept her focus, her eyes scanning the area with quiet intensity. Every step she took felt as if it was measured against the weight of the trust they had been given. They were here to help, but one wrong move, one sign of weakness, and the Exaraxi might turn on them. And after everything the humans had already seen, the last thing they could afford was an enemy that would view them as mere prey. We're close, one of the Exaraxi officers said in a low guttural voice, his gaze never leaving the humans as they walked. The central reactor is in this direction. You will need to understand our systems fully before attempting any repairs. Carter gave a curt nod, signaling her team to remain alert. Behind her, Lieutenant Derek Foster led a group of engineers, carrying their specialized equipment and devices designed to interface with the alien technology. They had only minimal intel on Exaraxi tech, but Earth's engineers were adaptable. They had to be, or humanity's fledgling interstellar presence would never have survived. As they reached the heart of the ship, they entered a vast chamber, the center of which was dominated by a massive reactor core. The room was dimly lit, but the reactor itself glowed with a faint, otherworldly blue light that seemed to pulse with life. But there was something wrong. The core, which had once been the beating heart of the Triumph was flickering erratically, emitting strange sounds of dissonance, as if the ship itself was trying to scream. "This is where it all comes apart," Foster murmured, staring up at the reactor with concern. His team moved forward, preparing to connect their diagnostic tools to the malfunctioning systems. Carter stepped forward to speak with Lorvok, who stood near the reactor, his arms crossed over his chest, his expression unreadable. "What happened to it?" she asked, trying to keep the tone neutral, though she could sense the frustration in his body language. The HFY commander remained silent for a moment before responding. "We do not know," Lorvok replied stiffly, his voice betraying the tension that had clearly been building since their arrival. "Our engineers attempted to repair the systems, but they are unskilled in the ways of our technology. We thought we could handle it ourselves, but the damage is deeper than we realized." "So you're saying the damage to your fleet is not just mechanical, but systemic?" Carter pressed, her mind racing with the implications. If the HFY's technology was as advanced as it seemed, there should have been contingency plans in place. Fail-safes, backup systems. Yet they were standing in the heart of their flagship, watching it die. Lorvok nodded reluctantly. "We have not encountered a problem like this before. The malfunction stems from the core systems of the ship. The failure is internal, embedded deep within the neural matrix that governs the ship's functions." Carter's brow furrowed. A neural matrix. She glanced back at her engineers. They had their work cut out for them. "We'll need to access the central data core," Foster said, his voice tight with concentration. "If we can isolate the fault within the neural system, we may be able to repair it, but we'll need full cooperation from your crew." Lorvok's eyes flashed with a mix of suspicion and reluctant agreement. "You will have it, for now," he said, his voice still laced with authority. "But know this. Any further failure will result in consequences." Carter met his gaze with unwavering determination. "Understood." With the go-ahead from the HFY, Carter and her engineers set to work. The process was delicate. Every connection, every calculation had to be precise. Foster and his team worked with quiet intensity, their tools humming as they interfaced with the alien systems. But as the hours wore on, it became clear that the task was more complicated than they had anticipated. The neural matrix was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was a living system, a hybrid of organic and technological components, and it required a level of understanding that humans simply did not possess. "We need more time," Foster said, frustration creeping into his voice. This is beyond us. We're seeing layers of code we don't even recognize." Carter exchanged a quick glance with Lorvok, who stood across the room, watching them with barely concealed disdain. "You must hurry," the HFY commander growled. "Every minute we waste, our fleet drifts further into oblivion." The pressure was mounting, but Carter knew there was no turning back. The fate of the entire fleet rested on their shoulders, and the humans couldn't afford to fail. Not now, not when they had come this far. They would fix the *triumph*, or they would perish trying. Hours had passed since the humans began their repairs, and the room inside the *triumph* was thick with an oppressive atmosphere. The engineers worked tirelessly, fingers flying over alien consoles as they attempted to decode the strange language of the ship's systems. The air hummed with the quiet tension of minds racing against time. Carter stood near the reactor, watching as Lieutenant Derek Foster and his team interfaced with the neural matrix. She could see the strain on their faces. Every moment felt like a critical threshold. The steady pulse of the reactor was interrupted by an occasional flicker of erratic light, an unsettling reminder that they were working on borrowed time. If they couldn't stabilize the core soon, it might not just be the *triumph* that would be lost. It could be the entire fleet, adrift and helpless in the cold expanse of space. But as much as Carter understood the stakes, she also understood the mounting pressure on her engineers. They weren't just facing the complicated alien technology. They were battling the growing skepticism of the HFY crew, whose patience was quickly wearing thin. Commander Lorvok had retreated to the far side of the room, standing with his arms crossed, his yellow eyes glowing faintly as he watched the humans. His posture was rigid, and though he hadn't spoken much, Carter could feel the weight of his judgment. The Exaraxi were not accustomed to relying on others, and even though they had no choice but to trust the humans for now, the commander made no effort to conceal his growing contempt. Carter couldn't blame him. If the positions were reversed, she would have likely felt the same way. The pride of an empire, broken and forced to rely on an inferior race. But right now, pride had no place in the equation. She was here to fix things, not to play political games. Still, every passing second seemed to bring the Xeraxi closer to their breaking point. "How's it coming, Lieutenant?" Carter asked, turning to Foster, who was hunched over a series of glowing panels, his brow furrowed in concentration. "We're getting closer, Captain," Foster said through gritted teeth. "But there's something off. We've managed to access parts of the system, but there are encrypted layers deeper than anything we've seen. I think it's more than just a system glitch. There might be an underlying issue with their core that we're not equipped to handle." Carter's pulse quickened. "Explain." "The ship's neural matrix seems to be more biological than mechanical. It's not just a machine. It's integrated with living tissue, some kind of organic computer that's deteriorating. We've never encountered anything like it. If we force it, we risk causing permanent damage." Carter felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just a technical issue. It was a biological one. A living, breathing ship. She glanced at Lorvok, whose eyes were now narrowed as he studied the human's progress. The tension between the two species was palpable. "Captain," Foster added, his voice quieter now. "If we don't find a way to stabilize the core soon, it could destabilize further. There's a risk that the entire ship could go critical. Explode, if we don't get a full understanding of how it functions." The implications were grim. A catastrophic failure of the Triumph would likely result in the destruction of the entire Xeraxi fleet. That thought alone was enough to make Carter's stomach twist with unease. "Understood," she said, her mind racing. She turned to face Lorvok, whose expression had shifted slightly, something almost akin to desperation flickering in his otherwise stoic features. He had heard the warning, and now his gaze was fixed on her. "This is taking too long," Lorvok growled, his voice low and dangerous. "You said you could fix this, human. But I am losing patience. The longer we wait, the more certain our death becomes. Your failure will not be tolerated." Carter held his gaze, refusing to back down. She couldn't afford to show any sign of weakness. "We are working as fast as we can, Commander. This is not just about speed. It's about precision. We can't rush this." Lorvok's lips curled into a sneer, and for a moment, Carter thought the commander might lash out. But he said nothing, merely turning on his heel and stalking toward the far side of the room. His officers followed him, keeping a close eye on the humans. As Carter watched them go, she felt the full weight of responsibility press on her shoulders. She was walking a fine line, caught between the desperate need to save an alien fleet and the growing animosity of the very species they were helping. And in the back of her mind, the constant fear of failure lingered. If they couldn't stabilize the Triumph, it might mean the end of humanity's first real alliance among the stars. "Captain," Foster's voice broke through her thoughts. "We've accessed a secondary control node. It's not much, but we're getting more data. We need to isolate the neural corruption and reroute the power flows manually. If we're quick, we might just pull this off." Carter nodded, her eyes steely with resolve. "Do it, and keep me updated. We don't have much time." The fate of the Triumph and its fleet rested on their hands now. No more mistakes. The room pulsed with the low hum of the Triumph's reactor, a mechanical heartbeat struggling to maintain its rhythm. Lieutenant Derek Foster and his team of engineers were working furiously, each move deliberate, every tool used with precision. The neural matrix was proving more complicated than they had expected, an organic technological hybrid, designed for stability, but now rotting from within. Every diagnostic readout was a puzzle that didn't quite fit, a riddle whose solution seemed just out of reach. Carter's eyes remained fixed on the monitors, her fingers tapping absently on the console as she glanced between the engineers and the increasingly anxious Saraxi crew. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. She could feel the weight of Lorvok's glare from across the room, his presence heavy, like a shadow looming over them. He had already warned them. Failure meant death. "We're not going to fail," Carter muttered under her breath. But even as she said it, doubt lingered at the back of her mind. She had seen the look in Lorvok's eyes, the barely contained fury that radiated from him like heat from a furnace. The humans could only offer help for so long before the Exaraxi would decide they were no longer welcome. And if the ship exploded before they could finish, the human fleet might very well be the next target. "Captain," Foster's voice cut through her thoughts. "We've found the corrupted node. It's deep in the reactor core. Something's blocking the power flow. We'll need to manually bypass it to stabilize the matrix." Carter's gaze sharpened. "How long will it take?" "It's not just a matter of time, Captain," Foster replied, wiping sweat from his brow as he spoke, his hands shaking slightly from the intensity of the task. "This node is heavily damaged. If we try to fix it without properly isolating the rest of the system, we could trigger a full meltdown. We'll need to reroute the energy to bypass it, but that will take more time than we have." Carter's pulse quickened. Every second counted. "We don't have that time. Can you stabilize it long enough for us to finish?" Foster's gaze was grim, his fingers running across the terminal in front of him. "I can try, but it's a long shot. The node is unstable. We could either save it or make it worse." There was no choice. Carter's eyes flicked to Lorvok, who had moved closer to the engineers, watching them with a dangerous mixture of hope and suspicion. His voice rang out cold and calculating. "Make your choice quickly, human. You have only one chance to fix this." Carter turned back to Foster. "Do it. We don't have another option. Stabilize the node, and I'll give you the time you need." Foster nodded tightly, sweat beading on his forehead. The rest of the engineering team worked in tense synchronization, rerouting power through secondary systems, manually bypassing damaged circuits as the alien vessel's reactor core flickered and sparked. Carter's hand clenched into a fist. The silence was deafening as they worked. There was a constant, rising tension. Each hum of the reactor was like a countdown, each glitch on the screens another step closer to failure. As Foster and his team continued their delicate work, Carter looked to Lorvok again, meeting his burning gaze. There was no escaping the weight of his silent judgment. The future of humanity's first significant interaction with another alien race hung in the balance, and every decision now was critical. She couldn't afford to make a mistake. "We're almost there," Foster said, his voice strained but determined. "Just a few more minutes." Suddenly, the entire room shook. The Triumph groaned under the stress of its damaged systems. Sparks flew from one of the side panels, and the lights flickered as the hum of the reactor reached a frantic crescendo. Carter's heart skipped a beat, and she turned to Foster with urgency in her eyes. "What happened?" she demanded. "We hit a power surge," Foster grunted, trying to keep the panic out of his voice. "It's trying to overcompensate. If we don't contain it now." Before he could finish, the lights dimmed to near darkness. The low hiss of the reactor's instability filled the room. Carter's hand flew to her communicator. "Report," she barked into the mic. "We're losing power to the stabilization matrix, Captain," came the voice of her chief engineer, Lieutenant Maria Vasquez, from across the comms. "The energy levels are dangerously unstable. We may not be able to hold the core much longer." The entire room seemed to hold its breath as Foster's hands flew over the controls, a look of absolute focus in his eyes. He muttered to himself, calculations and equations whirling through his mind, calculating the last-minute adjustments. The seconds felt like hours. Finally, Foster's voice broke through the tension. "Got it. I've rerouted the power and isolated the core. It's stabilizing." For a moment, nothing happened. The lights flickered once more, then steadied. The deep hum of the reactor quieted to a steady thrum. The screen in front of Carter shifted from red to green. The Triumph's core had stabilized. A collective sigh of relief washed over the humans, but Carter didn't allow herself to relax just yet. Not until the mission was complete. She turned to Lorvok, her eyes unwavering. "The core is stabilized," she said. "Now we can begin repairing the other systems, but we'll need to work quickly to ensure full functionality." Lorvok's face remained impassive for a long moment, and Carter wondered if he would lash out despite their success. Then, to her surprise, he nodded once, slowly. "Your race has done what we could not," he said, his voice a touch softer, though still carrying the weight of his pride. "You have earned our respect." It was a small victory, but in that moment, it was enough. The Triumph was not out of danger yet, but at least now it had a chance, and that was all they needed. The hum of the Triumph's reactor had settled into a steady rhythm, a sound that now symbolized the fragile hope that hung over the alien fleet. The room, though still tense, felt slightly less suffocating. Carter exhaled deeply, her hand still resting on the console. The repairs weren't complete yet, but stabilizing the core was a monumental first step. For the first time since arriving aboard the flagship, the humans and the HFY shared a moment of quiet acknowledgement. Carter turned toward Lorvok, who stood a few feet away, his yellow eyes still glowing faintly in the dim light of the chamber. The alien commander's posture had softened, and for a moment, his usual sternness seemed to melt away. He was no longer the unyielding force that had initially regarded the humans with open hostility and suspicion. Now, there was a flicker of something else, perhaps grudging respect, or the possibility that their alliance could become something more. "You've done what we could not," Lorvok said again, his voice less harsh, though still edged with a weight of responsibility. He took a slow step toward Carter, his eyes locked onto hers. "You have saved our fleet, and for that, we owe you our lives." Carter didn't flinch, despite the gravity of his words. "We're not out of the woods yet," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "There's still a lot of work to do before we can say the Triumph is fully operational again." The tension wasn't gone, not by a long shot. They had bought time, yes, but time was a luxury they didn't have. The damage to the other ships in the fleet was still extensive. The central reactor of the Triumph was stable for now, but the neural matrix was far from whole, and the other vessels in the fleet were still adrift. They had no time to waste. "We'll continue with the repairs," Carter added, turning back toward the engineers, who were already beginning to assess the next steps. Foster and his team worked in silence, their eyes focused on the holographic interfaces, their hands moving in perfect synchronization. Behind them, the rest of the human crew prepared for the next phase of the mission. This wasn't over yet. Lorvok's gaze lingered on the engineers, and Carter saw his chest rise and fall with a deep, resigned sigh. "You will not find the repairs easy," he said. "Our ships are not designed for those outside our race to understand. We've never allowed outsiders to meddle with our technology." Carter met his gaze, her voice calm but firm. "That's why we're here. We're not just trying to fix your ships. We're learning from them, understanding them. We're building a partnership, and that means trust, no matter how difficult it is." There was a long pause before Lorvok spoke again, his voice quieter, but still resolute. "We had a different vision for the future of our empire. We did not foresee relying on another species for survival. But I understand now that the old ways are no longer enough." Carter nodded, understanding the weight of what he was saying. The HFY, a race that had once dominated the stars, had fallen from a position of power. The truth was clear now. They could not continue on their own. It wasn't just about the ships or the technology. It was about survival. And survival meant they had to work together. For a brief moment, Carter saw something shift in Lorvok's expression, a flicker of uncertainty, perhaps mixed with a glimmer of hope. It was the first time she'd seen any vulnerability in him, a reminder that even the mightiest of civilizations could falter. "We have always believed we were above others," Lorvok said, his tone almost wistful. "But perhaps we were wrong." Carter didn't respond immediately, allowing the weight of his words to hang in the air. Instead, she focused on the task at hand. There was still too much to do, but she knew one thing for certain. This was a turning point. The alliance between the humans and the Exaraxi was no longer just a temporary measure of survival. It was the beginning of something new, something that could change the course of their collective futures. "Let's finish this," Carter said at last, her voice resolute. "We've got a fleet to save." The repair teams worked through the night, their efforts unbroken as the humans and the Exaraxi labored side by side. Carter's mind remained sharp, every move calculated and purposeful. It wasn't just the Triumph they were saving now. It was the future of two species. By the time the first rays of light from a distant star filtered through the Triumph's shattered hull, the repairs were nearly complete. The core had been fully integrated with the other systems. The damage to the ships in the fleet was beginning to stabilize, and the neural matrix, though not fully restored, was holding steady. When Lorvok stood beside Carter once more, the finality of their shared task hung in the air. His once aloof demeanor had shifted entirely. The weight of his pride had given way to a quiet respect for the humans who had saved them. "I will never forget this," he said, his voice a low rumble, filled with meaning. Carter smiled faintly, her eyes meeting his. "Nor will we." The Triumph wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a symbol of resilience, of the unknown future ahead, and the possibility of a partnership between two species. The Triumph had been saved, and with it, the seeds of a new alliance had been sown. As the fleet moved out from the shadows of the distant planets, humanity stood poised to make its mark on the stars once more, not as outsiders, but as partners. Together, they would face whatever the galaxy threw at them. And for the first time in a long while, Carter felt a glimmer of hope for what lay ahead.